Israel has stepped up its bombardment of southern Gaza as its military expands its ground offensive against Hamas militants. Now, Israel has told hundreds of thousands to evacuate from the area around Khan Younis and head towards the Mediterranean coast or further south towards the border with Egypt. But the United Nations says there is nowhere safe to go in Gaza.
In Khan Younis, residents say they are running out of safe places to go. Israel's aerial bombardment around this area of southern Gaza is now relentless, with the number of dead and injured being delivered to this hospital growing by the hour. Among them, Ibrahim's 2-month-old son, Adnan, born just days into this conflict and now lying injured on a hospital bed.
They told us to leave Gaza. There's a war in Gaza, so we left the north and came here to the south, just like they asked. But this is what we found in the south. What can we do? This is my son. He was born on the second day of the war, and we haven't been able to register his birth yet.
Israel's military has called for more evacuations in southern Gaza as it continues to extend its ground operation against Hamas militants. This latest video from the Israel Defense Forces is said to show troops involved in close-quarter fighting inside the Gaza Strip. Although we're not told where or when this footage was taken, Israeli tanks have been reportedly spotted close to Khan Younis in the south.
IDF forces in the Gaza Strip continue to expand ground operations. We attacked today with fighter jets in the entire Gaza Strip. Significant and very precise strikes based on intelligence. In addition, we are expanding the ground operation against Hamas centers of gravity everywhere in the Gaza Strip.
For those choosing to flee, this is what awaits. In this so-called safe zone, people say they are getting no help and do their best to set up makeshift shelters, however and wherever. How long they'll be able to seek refuge here, nobody knows. What is certain, though, is Israel's determination to wipe out Hamas, and that its offensive inside Gaza is unlikely to stop until that mission is accomplished.
Journalist Hazem Balousha used to live in and report from Gaza. He's joining us today from Jordan. It's good to see you, Hazem. Can you tell us what you're hearing about the situation in Gaza at the moment?
Situation in Gaza is getting more intense bombardment. It's all over the Gaza Strip. The reports coming from there that there were airstrikes and shelling from the tanks or artillery or even the Navy ships across the Gaza Strip. Mainly the most intense was in two areas, in North Gaza, in Beit Lahia and Jabalia, and the main one is in the south, in east of Khan Younis and other parts of Khan Younis. There was a blackout. Communication went off yesterday evening, but the reports coming today in the morning that it comes back gradually in some parts.
Now, we know that Israel's military is calling for more evacuations in southern Gaza. Where are people now expected to take shelter?
It's very hard. I mean, this is always asked by ordinary people. We are talking about 1.9 million people from Gaza got displaced, according to the figures from UNRWA and UN agencies. 1.2 million are sheltering at UNRWA schools in 156 schools, which is very small. The number is, they are talking about 1 million in the south, in about 100 schools, and overcrowded, spread of diseases among the refugees there. It's very hard, and as the UNRWA in the latest report said that many people literally slept in the street or at the entrance of the shelters or the school in the southern area because there is no place and no areas to go. Some people go to some relatives, some neighbors or some friends. Some people rent, but it's not available there. I can see it on the social media. Everybody is asking if there is a place to rent or a place to go. It's very hard. We are talking about a huge number of refugees going to very small area.
Mm-hmm. If we take a look at Israel's operations in the south of Gaza now, specifically the city of Khan Younis, do we know why efforts are being focused there in particular right now?
Khan Younis is part of the second phase, according to the Israeli army, that is going to be targeted. The first phase was focusing on the North Gaza city and the northern area. Despite that, still some part of it is under ground invasion now in Jabalia in the north and Shijaiya east of Gaza city. But the main focus on Khan Younis. Israel is saying that this is Khan Younis is the biggest city in the south of Gaza Strip, and it's the widest among the other cities in the whole Gaza Strip. Israel says that some Hamas figures are there. It's not clear yet who's are there, but according to the statements from Israeli army or different other agencies, that it's part of the battle, and it's going to last for some time. Now the focus in parts of Khan Younis, not all of it, mainly the east and the north part of Khan Younis.
Hazem Balousha reporting from Amman. Thanks so much for your time, Hazem.
Thank you.
Now, after weeks of bombardment by Israel, only a few of Gaza's hospitals are still in operation. The World Health Organization has announced that it will be holding an emergency session later this week to discuss the healthcare situation in Gaza. Aid agencies have already warned that health conditions there are dire. DW reporter Mohammed Al-Khalout sent us this report from Khan Younis.
Increasing numbers of displaced Palestinians are falling victim to deadly infections. And there are fears that hepatitis, diarrhea and respiratory illnesses could cause more deaths than bombs and missiles. Here in the south of the Gaza Strip, Dina Abu Taubsh takes her daughter to a clinic in Khan Younis.
My daughter is suffering from fever, cough and cold. We were displaced to these schools, and there are many children here. The children have got infections because of overcrowding. The situation is difficult for my daughter, but also for other children.
But it's not only the health infrastructure that is overwhelmed. Other critical infrastructure is also lacking, and there's not enough drinkable water or food. Many Gazans have resorted to eating just one meal a day, prioritising children. As more families flee the conflict, poor sanitation is becoming widespread across the besieged strip, causing hygiene-related diseases such as lice infestation and scabies, making it harder for health authorities to control disease outbreaks.
At present, there's no way of controlling the spread of infection, especially with the war continuing. There's a lack of water suitable for human consumption, along with a shortage of energy and electricity to operate generators. The overcrowding and transfer of people to shelters, and the failure to provide personal supplies to limit the spread of diseases.
Health organisations have repeatedly sounded the alarm that the situation is becoming deadlier by the day. Dina's had to wait for hours to buy essentials like medicine for her sick daughter. About 1.8 million Gazans are now displaced. and hopes that the situation could improve are dwindling.
For more, let's cross straight to DW correspondent Rebecca Ritters, who joins us now from Jerusalem. Rebecca, can you give us the latest on Israeli operations in the south of the Gaza Strip?
Well, what we know, Anya, is that since Sunday evening, we've had confirmation that this ground operation has now spread to the south of the Gaza Strip and, in fact, is now moving towards the entire Gaza Strip. We know that the focus is on the southern city of Khan Younis, and tanks, an armoured personnel vehicle and soldiers fighting in combat, hand-to-hand combat in those areas. We know that the bombardment is continuing in the south, also in the north, which, as you heard in that report, is virtually a closed military zone now, that northern part of the Strip. The Strip, as we've known for some time now, has been completely split in two, and we know that all civilians were asked to leave, to head south, to evacuate south, which is now, since the resumption of fighting on Friday, where the Israeli Defence Forces or the Israeli military are working towards and focusing on Khan Younis being the focal point. We know it's a symbolic and the Israeli military say also a central fighting area for Hamas militants, that it is, you know, for want of a better word, a command centre, an area where they believe that the Hamas militants operate from, and it is going to be a centre where they're targeting. But of course, for the many millions of civilians who are now sheltering or trying to find some form of safety, excuse me, in the south, of course, things looking very dire, with people running out of places to run from the fighting.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. Not so long ago, Israel had called on people to move from the north to the south of Gaza. Now the south is being targeted. So just clarify for us what this means for the civilians.
Well, I mean, fear and danger, basically. We're talking about 1.8 approximately million displaced people who are trying to find shelter. We hear harrowing stories of people sleeping on the streets. They have nowhere to run and hide. Many have moved from evacuation point to evacuation point during this war, and they are really running out of places to run and hide to. We know that many of the places where people had been sheltering have also been bombed, including schools and hospitals. So people just finding it very difficult to move further south. We're talking about a lot of people now corralled into a small scrap of land. And the Israeli military continue to say that they telling civilians where to go or to evacuate to try to prevent civilian deaths. But it's a relatively complicated system. They've set up a map that has these numbered squares on it. They expect civilians to be able to locate where they are in that map, in that numbered map, and then they give lists to which numbers are going to be attacked at any given moment, and then people are expected to move. But the problem really being, as I mentioned, is where to go, and many people not knowing where to move to, and also becoming increasingly tired from the ongoing bombardment and not knowing, you know, where to go to, feeling that they have nowhere else to run.
DW's Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem. Thanks so much, Rebecca.